If you have followed the rules but feel unsatisfied with where that's gotten you, this podcast is for you.
We'll help you learn how to reach your goals through creativity, intuition, and flow.
Welcome to the Flow into Authenticity podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Flow into Authenticity podcast. I am here with my podcast hostesses, Allison and Leslie. How are you both doing today?
Ooh, I like being called a hostess.
Hostess? I don't know if that's
even
with the mostess.
Something you're supposed to say now.
It reminds me of a time that I co-hosted a party called Booze for Boobs. We were raising money for breast cancer, and it was very successful. We made paper mache boobs that had little holes in them that you could put your money in. Anyway, that's one of the last times I was a hostess.
I love it.
Nice. When I was 16, for my 16th birthday party, my dad was a pastor, and he bought like these blow up balloons, and they, for some reason, they had, you know how balloons have like one little nipple at the top? These had like two nipples, so they look like boobs. So my 16th birthday party had boob balloons. It was really funny, and everybody thought it was pretty funny, including my conservative parents. Who have a sense of humor.
What's your boob party story, Leslie?
No, I'm trying to think. I don't know if I have a boob party story. Hush. I haven't lived, apparently.
Apparently.
Well, I know what we're doing for your next birthday then.
That's right. Okay, yes. 45. It's going to be all about boobs. I love it.
So, we have
you transition out of boobs. I don't know. Is there anything else?
Everybody loves boobs.
There's a surgery for that.
That's true.
That's
true. That is true. That's true.
That's a good point.
But
yeah, so we're gonna have kind of a little bit of a different episode today. We did have something planned, and then what should we say? We started talking.
We all started crying.
Yeah, basically.
When we did the check-in, we all started crying.
Yeah. So, we like to keep it pretty real here at the Flow into Authenticity podcast. I feel like we should shorten that. FIA,
the FIA podcast.
FIA pod. The FIA pod. And we like to talk about, the real things, like not, you might have noticed that when we ask each other how we're doing, we don't always say we're doing great because we're going through life, and we've got one person who has two little babies. Got one person that has a teenager.
He's full on teen.
Teenager.
He's a teenager.
And me, who's, I don't know, I'm going through perimenopause and all that crap. And, all the physical stuff. Anyway, it's not, even though you're following your dreams, pursuing what you love, you're always kind of going through stuff. So we want to talk today. We decided to kind of do a different kind of an episode and talk about what you do when you're going through stuff and how to kind of just keep going, right? How to work through that, be with what is, and keep going, keep pursuing what you love, keep going through this process. And so we've been talking about where you're feeling stuck. I know that probably even between the three of us, there's places where we feel stuck right now.
Yes.
What to do next. So we talked about like finding inspiration. How do you find out the possibilities of what you want to do next and kind of start to step into that. And then last time we talked about letting go of assumptions and letting go of some of those things. So this is going to kind of tie into some of that, like letting go a bit. And yeah, so we can kind of just take turns talking about some of those things that we've been talking about. And hopefully it'll help all of you out there who are struggling. This has been just such a freaking hard past 3 years, you know. So those of you who feel like you're moving forward, you're taking steps, and then you're taking 2 steps back, I feel that. So let's talk about it.
Yeah. So one thing that might be a misunderstanding that some people have is that when you go through a process of making a big change in your life, then at the end of that process, everything's going to be amazing forever. Like that's what most of the self-help books are trying to convince you of. Like, just do this and then your life will be great forever. But the thing about the flow process we've been talking about is that it's something that you just pull out of your back pocket whenever something arises, and something will arise. And maybe, you know, you're at the W in the flow framework with one thing in your life, and maybe you need to get right back into the F in another part of your life.
Oh, I was just thinking about this, Allison. I was thinking that, you know, life is always asking us to grow in all these different places, and we're just always growing, and it's so frustrating because I just want to be one of those people who's just has the same job, lives in the same place, has the same partner, like just you know, it's just
and is content with that.
Content like my whole life, and it's just not me. And so it's just like life is just always asking me to grow constantly, and I'm always having to go through this framework of, okay, what the F?
Right.
What is my F?
Yeah, what the F?
What the F? What am I finding?
Let's change the what the F to what's the F. That's
F?
a good reframing.
Yeah.
What's the F? What's
that's
the
going in our
finding
book.
Inspiration?
That's going in our book.
Okay. Oh, this is good. We could really use some help with our book.
Yeah. We'll talk
Leslie,
about that.
what's on your mind today?
Well, I think
You want to talk about what you were talking to us about, or no?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I set this out the other day. So I lead this writing group on Tuesday evenings, and I sent an email. I was like, life is just too lifey right now. I can't, I had to step back, and that's kind of what it's just a lot of different things. I think one of the things, that's hard for me right now is having a teenager and not knowing how to do that very gracefully. It's a struggle. It's different. And that's a challenge for me too. My son and I are very close, and the teenage years bring on new challenges as he tries to, become who he is and individuate and all that stuff. And it's kind of painful as a parent. And cognitively, I knew that was coming and knew that it was going to be really challenging. When it's happening, it's an entirely different level of processing. So it's stressful, and it kind of feeds into everything. So managing that on top of health stuff, and as somebody who has had anxiety since my first breath, probably, living in uncertainty is really challenging from day to day. And so you have all those things swimming around in your mind, and then you're trying to do life. And sometimes it's just too much. You just have to step back and take a beat. And it's very challenging, especially it being a chronically ill person and having limited energy and all of those things. So trying to work on the things that I want to work on while also navigating the stress of life, right? It just gets too lifey sometimes.
How do you do? So tell us a little bit about how you do that, like how you navigate, how you take one day at a time, like how you kind of be present with those feelings while, very slowly moving forward, right? You and I have talked about this as, people have a lot of that stuff in common.
Yeah.
For the kid.
So this, So this, the being present and just allowing myself to sit with my feelings is kind of a new skill for me. And I really had no choice but to figure out how to do that when I was very sick, because I literally was doing nothing but just trying to survive. And that allowed me to sort of, because every other responsibility was removed from my life. Like my literal job was just to stay alive. Someone else was managing all the other details of my life. I really learned how to sit with that. Like that's it. That's all you have. And so as the further away I've gotten from being that ill, I've stopped practicing that as much, like doing a lot of meditation.
Yeah.
Telling people no, I kind of have stopped doing that as much. So now I'm finding I need to do that. And yesterday life kind of forced that on me, right? My internet was out for the whole morning, and I had all these big plans of things I needed to do that would require internet, and I couldn't do any of them. And so I read 2 books.
Oh my gosh.
I did all this journaling. I just sat. I was like, oh, why haven't I done this? So, life kind of forced me to remember.
Yeah.
Sometimes
as it does.
You just need to take a step back and just, I've had a lot of doctor's appointments lately. I didn't have any doctor's appointments in the morning. So it was just sort of this crescendo of like, okay, you have a minute to catch your breath. And that is a very good thing. Like, I can't believe how good I felt after taking the time to meditate, do my stretches I need to do for my occupational therapy stuff, all this stuff. So I really found myself needing to go back into that headspace of like prioritizing that moment to just sort of reorganize my body.
Right.
Through meditation, through journaling, through breathing, through doing the things that just fundamentally take care of my container, right?
Right. That reminds me of my friend Harmony. Her sister has this rule where like it's like no technology Wednesdays or something like that, where they don't allow themselves to have their phones or use Wi-Fi or watch TV or anything like that. And oh my gosh, that would have seemed so mundane 10 years ago. Like, oh yeah, of course there are days where you just don't, you don't have a screen in front of you. But now, like, even having a couple of hours when you're not connected to the internet or checking your phone or watching something online, like that is such a rarity. And it's been such a slippery slope to this place. And it's a really unhealthy place to live, is being connected all the time to everyone else and being in a mode of being responsive rather than like, oh, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
Right. Right. I think that's the big question, right? So it's like, I totally had to lean into my F of finding inspiration, and it was so great. Like, I was like, oh, I just feel like reading. Oh, I haven't, I feel like just free writing and journaling. Like, yeah. And I ended up writing a little piece that I want to submit. Like,
whoa.
See, that's what happens.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a little forced upon me, but it was a very good remander that when I do that, and then, it chills out my anxiety when I do that. It quite, it's a domino effect when you just kind of lean into that a little bit, like, oh, life is telling me I need to do this.
Yeah. It feels counterintuitive.
Right.
Right. And didn't you have a vacation as well?
Yeah, we went, we went to the ocean. Yeah. And it was nice to just get away and, be. and
Because
just
I
be
think
still,
last time we
kinda.
were talking about, we feel like we have to produce all the time, but
Yes.
actually doing that kind of contemplation, that, checking in with ourselves, that being with the pain, being with the feelings, and that actually helps us to get in touch with our inspiration.
Absolutely. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think the more you try to run away from that, the worse it is, and the longer it will hinder you.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like it's like, so if I'm thinking about this, right, we have these two networks of a brain. One of them is focused like on like the kind of practical aspects, and one of them is more focused like internally, and that's where we get all those ideas and connected to kind of the bigger picture, connected to our subconscious and everything that we are, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we do all of that work, we become really connected and we look inside of ourselves for that inspiration. And so it feels really counterintuitive because the world's always telling us to like look outside and like, produce and, yeah. But when we kind of step back, I feel like I'm going through just a lot of grief. My cat died a month ago. I'm going through like just a lot of grief related to just like the time that I got him, which was like 20 years ago, and what I was going through back then, in sort of finding myself and everything that I went through. And I feel that I've been in sort of a similar place of not being able to do anything and going through actually a really deep depression. This past whole year actually is really struggling with depression and anxiety, a lot because of hormones, with this whole perimenopause thing. I've always struggled with anxiety and depression. And I think that when you do, the perimenopause, the menopause thing just is so much worse. It kind of feels like you aren't yourself. And so this has been a real struggle to kind of keep on the path and to know like, okay, what can I do? Like, how much can I do? For others.
Yeah. How do you,
and for myself.
So in this really, really difficult place that you're in, what things make you feel comforted, or what things bring you just even the tiniest bit of joy? Or is there anything that you feel connected to from your true self, because you said you don't feel like yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, it's honestly been really hard because, because of COVID, and I think we've talked a bit about values here, haven't we? Like coming back to your core values.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I think that when I think about my core values, and this is something that I work with, clients on, is to come back to your core values. So one of mine is beauty. One of mine is like travel and exploration. So those are the things that really ignite me. So travel is one of the things that, I know that I always feel like, or even just exploration, like getting out of the house, going to the, whenever I go to the beach or, to the park, or go in the studio and explore and do that. Like I feel more like myself, connected to my deeper self. And also when I connect with others, right? So when I'm meeting, weirdly, it's like when I meet with clients, it's like I feel very much, I'm very present. I'm very feel very much like myself. Like I can help them. Like I'm there for them. Like when I'm working on work that I love, So I think it feels a lot of times that we can't move forward, like we want to give up. But there was really this thing in me this year that was like, you can't give up. You just have to keep going, right? Not in like a dogmatic way, but in a way of like, no, this is your purpose. You know, this is what you love. So keep going, just little by little. And when you do have those moments of feeling good or having more energy, then really moving forward with it, using that energy, you know. And as a person with chronic illness, having migraines so much as well this year, you know, just I know that I've had to really lean in the times when I feel good, and then when I don't feel good, I just have to have compassion for myself and do what I can and rest. So
let go.
yeah.
You said something that reminded me about something that you do that I think is really cool. So you said you feel better maybe when you take a walk on the beach. And I remember one time you were working on our book and you recorded yourself talking about like ideas from the book when you were at the beach. And then maybe you transcribed them or you came back and you wrote down the ideas. But that I thought was such a cool way to figure out how to write the book while you're doing something that is really fulfilling for you. And you also talked about like working with people and talking with people and trying to help them through things that they're going through. I mean, for me, that really resonates because I know that I get energy and excitement from being around people and talking about cool ideas. So if you know that about yourself, you know that's a value for you, maybe you can apply that to some challenge that you have. Like, okay, I have to write this book. I'm having trouble when I just sit down by myself in front of the computer. But maybe if I talk it through with a friend, like maybe that'll help me get unstuck. And just realizing what is it that feeds your soul and makes you feel joyful and supported and inspired, and what is it that is really challenging for you, and that where you just feel like you're walking through quicksand or something, and figure out how to use this value or this joyful thing to kind of pull you out of that quicksand. And maybe your process for doing something can look really weird and totally non-traditional.
Yes.
But you could get to the same place.
Yeah. I love working with people to help them find their flow, right? So, and that is different for everybody. Yeah. So I often call like the park my second office because I will go there to get ideas. And ideas come to me when I just sit there or walk. And so, you know, yes, your process can look different, but yet, you know, it's different for everybody based on what works for you, you know. And I know Leslie and I've talked about like just sitting down in a chair doesn't always work for us. To have that rigid schedule doesn't always work for us.
What's interesting is that I think about like how great it would be for thinking creatively and like getting unstuck if I were to be able to go walk in the woods and think about work instead of sitting at my desk and thinking about work. But then I think about how guilty I would feel because like to other people it would look like I'm just blowing off work.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that is an assumption that I am making that I think might be really unhelpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I feel so much guilt. My husband is working so hard, taking care of the kids all the time. So whenever I do anything that's not like sitting at my desk intensely working, I feel a little bit guilty about it.
That is something that I have had to work through so much. Because it's just the culture, right? It's just it's what we have been told work should look like.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's absolutely not. And what we're finding now through science is that is absolutely not what work looks like. Because when we actually get into our body, And when we have time to process, then it's actually more productive.
Right. And I even think just physically where you work, right? This is all, look how many jobs, obviously some jobs can never be done remotely, but look how many jobs can be done remotely, whereas workplaces have really tried to control that. And then COVID, and it's like, oh, okay, we'll extend you this remote work. And now all these people are getting to be called back into the office, and I'm listening to friends that have to go back in and they're like, oh, I'm so much more stressed out. I'm so much more tired. I was like so productive at home, and other people love it. And it's not for everybody, but like, it is this assumption that, oh, it has to be done in an office at a desk, and it's like, it can be done so many different ways.
That's
it's
why
really, no, go ahead. Sorry.
That's why autonomy is a flow trigger. Because, because knowing yourself and what you need gets you into flow. So
you have a really serious look on your face right now, Esther. You're like, no, this shit is real.
I'm serious. Like, I'm really serious about flow.
But I do think that lends itself to so many different things, right? Yeah. Like knowing, Allison, that you probably would do better if you could just go for a walk and be in nature, right? And be
yes. And what's really interesting to me that I'm realizing is historically mathematicians and physicists and people like this have been known for being people who go on long walks, who pace, who Einstein. Are moving, who need to move to think. I went to grad school at Dartmouth, and there was a story I heard about this math professor at Dartmouth who got the cops called on him because he was just walking up and down this street, where all these fancy houses were, for hours and hours. And the people were like, oh, this guy is casing the joint. But he's just a mathematician working through a tough problem, and he needed to be walking outside to think through it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's so true. But we're an outcome focused culture, achievement focused, and we're okay, you have to work for 8 hours and you have to be doing it in this way, and it's prescriptive.
There's a book called The Extended Mind, and by Annie Murphy Paul, and she talks about all the research that's been done about this, about how getting into we actually need to get into our body to be able to think, our body mind, right? We have this whole identification with the mind. But yeah, so there's this whole overlay of, we're kind of talking about the culture as it's been passed down to us from colonization, from industrialization. So the school system was built from industrialization to create, perfect, good, basically workers and slaves, right?
Right. Everyone sits still in your desks all day.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're 7.
Right.
Yeah. So that,
and how, that does not work for most of the population. That's for a very specific.
So it achieves something, right? But it doesn't achieve creativity. It doesn't support creativity and innovation, for sure.
Yeah.
But it also loses a lot of people that, can't do that.
Yes, so people with ADHD, people with neurodivergence, people who, people like Einstein or Tesla or all those mathematicians you're talking about who are brilliant and have all these brilliant ideas that want to come out of them. I'm just thinking about our listeners who we started out kind of talking about going through hard times and going through struggles, and if you're feeling like that you aren't able to just sit down and focus right now, thinking about what do you need right now? What is going on in your life? it is a process, right? Creativity is a process, and kind of stepping back and realizing that during this time, you might need to take it slow, or you might need to just do one thing or one thing less, right? Or you might need to go for a walk, or thinking about you might need to work in a different way, right? So kind of bringing it back to this idea of like when we're having struggles, like how do we keep going and working in a way that feels good to us. And I think setting the intention is really important of like, yeah, this is actually what I'm motivated by. This is what I want to do, you know, and then just getting connected to yourself of what do I need? Like Leslie, like you were talking about.
Yeah, and I was going to say, part of, I think, what's helpful too is that sometimes the thing that you're trying to avoid thinking about or processing or whatever, because it feels so overwhelming or too stressful, is the thing that you need to lean into a little bit. Like for me, as a writer, like sometimes the thing that's causing me the most stress, and I feel like, oh, I can't do anything else because I'm just thinking about this thing. Well, turns out that's the thing I need to write about.
Damn.
And
yes.
so it even like if you write about, like, so I'll let myself write about it, and sometimes I can't go very far because it's too close, it's too much. But if I can just kind of just gently lean into that thing, I find that it allows me to just creep forward a little bit. So if there's a way, whatever that is for you, not everyone processes through writing, but, you know, maybe it is just exercise, or maybe it is, you know, whatever it is. Like you're saying, Esther, that thing that makes you feel comfortable, that makes you feel like, oh, and then lean into that thing that you're resisting just a little bit and test the waters. And then I feel like that allows you space to kind of move forward a little bit.
I mean, I can relate to this a little bit with the whole weather thing. So my just being here in Seattle is how I feel stuck right now because it's so gray and I really need sun. And so I keep asking the universe for like little sun vacations. And it's pretty funny because I asked for a little vacation, like please make every time I ask, it seems like something opens up for me, which is so funny. So it kind of feels like what you're talking about is like leaning into, I feel like I can't move forward because I'm so kind of stuck from this weather. Like it's bringing me down so much. And I feel like what I need is sun breaks or to get some sun. And so I just keep manifesting these little sun breaks every time I ask. It's really weird, like the coincidences that have been happening anyway. Is that kind of similar in some ways of leaning into what you need?
I think so.
So I'll just keep, it's just kind of a funny like coincidence because I'll just keep, I think when you see people doing something that maybe I'm going on a tangent here, but
no,
like I would see people kind of going on vacation or enjoying the sun, and I'm like, I get so mad, you know, and I want, and that was kind of the frustration or the tension that's been keeping me. And so leaning into that for me was just, okay, this seems silly, but I'm just going to take these breaks, right? Yeah, I guess that's my leaning in is like, I know this is what I need based on my values, and I'm going to do that.
Right.
But I think go ahead. Sorry, Allison.
Maybe you can't afford it, but maybe you need to afford it. Like, maybe
exactly.
You don't realize how
much I need
how
it.
important it is. Yeah. Once you kind of value tag.
Yes.
Once you figure out how much value there is in that for you, then maybe it doesn't seem quite as expensive, or you figure out a way to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Allison, do you want to talk about maybe what's going on for you, or there was places
Oh,
of
I
feeling stuck
well,
for you?
yeah. So I love writing books because I love getting the idea for writing a book and starting it. And I love like finishing it and having it published, but I hate like the 80% of the middle part of writing the book. And
Hard.
I'm
Oh,
writing
yeah.
3 books right now. And I just feel really like stuck in all of them. And I'm not totally sure what to do about it, but every couple weeks I make myself do something that's moving each project forward. And one of the things that, like, I wrote for an hour and a half on Monday in one of the books that I haven't really worked on for quite some time. And what I just let myself do is I let myself look at all the stuff that needed to be done and pick the thing that looked most interesting instead of like picking the thing that I thought should be done next. And that was really helpful to me.
I love it because we're working on a book together, and we are very stuck.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like it's moving forward at all. But
No.
but I love that you always say that to us. You're like, what feels really fun, and I love that you always say that when we're working. So I love that.
That's so
Yeah,
true.
okay. So I'm doing it with everything.
That's
and at some
great.
point, like, all the fun stuff has been done.
Yeah.
You just need to have a new strategy. So for me, like at that point when all the fun stuff is done, I need accountability. Like there's a book that it's like 90% written and it's just totally stalled.
Yeah.
And one of my
That's so
co-authors
hard.
was like, let's meet every week and we'll work on it every week. And it's like, okay, that's the
great.
only way this is going to happen is if
Yeah.
I have a buddy.
Yeah.
So
But I
That's
think
important
that's
to
good.
know.
figuring out.
Yeah, because you have to let go of the assumption that there's only one way to do it,
Right.
Yeah.
and that there's a prescriptive order. And I don't think
Yeah.
there is. Like, I mean, I am slowly also working on a book, and it is so slow. And I'm like, I haven't worked on it hardly at all, but I've been writing all these other things, right? Like, so it's like
Right.
I'm hoping that is in the background processing
Well,
the other project, you know?
maybe it's helpful to have a book project to procrastinate on, to force you to do other
Yeah.
projects. It's like when I have an exam to grade, I'm like, my toilets all get cleaned and, I make a beautiful meal. And if I didn't have those exams I was supposed to be grading, like none of that other stuff
That's
would happen.
hilarious.
So maybe
hilarious.
sometimes we need
Yeah.
we
I
need
love that.
these things. This relates to our procrastination piece.
Right. But it's also like the process, right? Like the process is also I mean, like, it's all part of it.
It's
Like,
part of the
that's-
process.
It's all part of
Well,
the
I love-
process.
A couple things. I mean, we did talk about procrastination last time. I mean, there's always so much to talk about, but I love kind of practicing this, cultivating the motivation. So, practicing going back to thinking about, okay, why am I doing this?
Yes.
Why am I doing this? What do I love? And just this sort of contemplation. I love the word contemplation because I think it's one that we don't use in our era right now.
Because we
But this
don't do it very much, right?
Right. But this contemplation, like while you're cleaning the toilets, while you're procrastinating, contemplating, okay, what is it about this project that I love? And then you can sort of like bolster the motivation, if that makes sense, of like, sort of like when you're, you think about your partner and like how long you've been with them for like 13 years and like it's a really long time and like
Right.
all
And
this
you
stuff,
feel
but like
a little,
yeah, I mean, you get annoyed with all of their noises and but
Right.
like if you want to kind of bring that love to your heart to like motivate you to connect with them again, you can do that by just thinking about when you met or think about like what really makes you love them, the really good parts of them. Ooh, I'm like turning myself on right now. I'm like really getting excited about this like
we're getting somewhere good.
Like this idea of but you know what I mean? Like sort of bringing up the love of that project. Like bringing it up.
With what made you excited. At the beginning. Yes.
Because our brains, like we've talked about before, right? They love kind of the negative stuff.
Right. Negativity bias.
Negativity bias. And so you have to sometimes consciously shift and be like, okay, and what's good?
Yeah.
And what's working?
Yeah.
And what is this exciting about this? And, you know, and I think we have to definitely do that consciously. And
yes, I have so much trouble making space for that, like making mental space, making time. So much trouble.
Well, when you're cleaning the toilet, when you're
in the shower,
washing the dishes, when you're in the shower, you know,
I'm
like
listening to our podcast when I'm washing the dishes. What are you talking about?
Oh yeah, that's true. I do that too. I listen to podcasts.
I mean that's the problem.
Making space in our
See, this goes back to why I loved having the internet taken away from me.
Yes,
because we have and I see this in my child, right? Nobody knows how to have downtime anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We just don't even know how to do. We're like breeding it out of our existence. Yeah. And I'm like, what is that doing to our brains?
Yes.
Oh,
there's something about
good.
Silence. There's something about silence that we need for creativity. We need for motivation. We need
to connect to ourselves.
To connect to ourselves. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Otherwise,
I miss meditation. I used to go.
I know.
Went through my divorced from my first marriage. We started going to this Buddhist monastery for this meditation class, and I got really involved in the monastery and even went on a pilgrimage to Taiwan, which was amazing. And I would go to the monastery like twice a week for 5 years and would meditate, and it was just amazing. But when I had kids, I had to stop doing that. And oh my gosh, I miss it. It's hard when something like that changes because you maybe take for granted that that's a part of your life, and you don't see how it's really important to you. And so when something changes, you don't, like cognitively, you don't think about what you're going to do to replace that or get that same benefit.
Yeah. So I think we can use this process, the flow process, for that, you know. So where am I stuck? Finding inspiration. What could I do? So going through all the ideas of like, what could I do? What are the possibilities? Can I take 5 minutes in the morning or at night? Like 5 minutes, you know, or when I'm washing, or like on the drive, like when I'm driving to work, you know, can I meditate? Like, can I meditate? You know, like all the possibilities, letting go of assumptions, letting go of the assumptions that I don't have time, right? Like, or, you know, opening up to the possibilities. Like, what does my friend do who meditates? What does this person do who meditates and has kids, right? What do they do? Right. How do they find time? Or how can I create that in the way that works for me? You know?
You're making me want to go jump in my car right now and drive to Kubota Gardens and just go think for a half an hour there and then come back to work. Maybe I'll do it. I think I have an hour and a half.
Oh my goodness. We just had a breakthrough, y'all. We just had a breakthrough.
I'm inspired.
Should we wrap it up? Should we just finish it off with that? I love that.
Okay.
I love that. Allison's going to go.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm really going to do it. I'm going to go buy something to eat, and I'm going to go to the gardens, which I've never been to. I've been hearing for years about how I need to go to Kubota Gardens, and I'm just going to go and check it out and give myself like a problem to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, do a little bit of just clearing your mind first.
Yeah, yeah.
And just be sitting for...
Just breathe.
Or, you could give yourself a little
ask
question
myself a question. Yeah, that's what I'm...
And the curiosity question. I love talking.
Right.
Have we talked about that before? Someday we'll talk about the curiosity question.
Well, no. Say something about that now, because that could be a good 4%.
Oh, okay. Yeah, 4%. So a curiosity question, Stephen Kotler calls it the MacGyver method. So this is where we're using our brain to actually work for us in a way that can help us solve problems, right? So I've talked about the 2 networks of the brain. So when you're feeling stuck in a problem, like for instance, Allison, how should I meditate, or how should I move forward with this book? And you're just kind of stuck. We want to get into that more like default or the way that your brain can kind of subconsciously connect and find a solution, like when it's in the shower or when you're meditating and stuff. So ask your brain a question. How should I meditate? Or how should I finish the book? What's the best way to kind of, move forward? And then do something that will get you into that slower brainwave state, like meditating, walking, taking a shower, taking a bath, gardening, something like that gets you into flow, that gets you into that default network.
With no phones, no internet, no
yes.
Yes.
Disconnect, right? So we want our brain to like do this work for us, and then just do that and allow your brain to come up with the answer. So whatever you all out there, whatever you're struggling with, ask yourself a curiosity question and then do what makes you happy. Like Christy, our friend Christy, she said she wrote her whole dissertation while she was running.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, so ask yourself a question, then get into whatever makes you get into that flow state, and then just stay open, stay open to the answer coming in this sort of soft way, right? Kind of keep it in the back of your mind, as we say, right? And then keep open to those possibilities. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Hooray.
Yay.
I think we did it.
We did this weird episode.
Yeah, I love it though. And it really connected to the flow framework. So so people can see how it can apply to lots of different situations in their lives. So hopefully this was helpful to everyone. Hopefully it maybe sparks some interesting questions for you. Thanks again for listening. Just a reminder, if you're liking this podcast, we'd love it if you would leave us a review, rate us, recommend us to your friends, all of that good stuff. Please share the love. Thank you again for listening. Anything else we want to say before we sign off?
Just you can, if you want more information about coaching with me, Esther, you can follow me on Instagram at Esther Loopstra Art. You can find my website, flowintoauthenticity.com, or check out the YouTube in the link below. And I have more YouTube videos about all this stuff too. So yeah, have a great week, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Flow into Authenticity is hosted by Esther Loopstra, Leslie Blumenstein, and me, Allison Henrich. Our original theme music is by James Wetzel. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share Flow into Authenticity from your favorite podcast app.